Welcome back. Choose your fighter. Dun dun dun.
Final round.
LOL. Okay. Did you see a star? Are they stars? They're not really stars. I think that's just a imbalanced thought pattern that you're having. That stinks really. It means you stink like bacterial vaginosis. Alright? Thank you so much, you guys. Welcome in. Today we're getting into a gossip update. We haven't done one in such a long time, so I wanted to like get one done. Also, you know, I might get backlash for saying this, but you know, don't follow me, but happy birthday President Donald Trump. That's still the president of the United States. And that is a huge honor. So do not disrespect your president. All right. But let's get into it. Happy birthday, you guys. We have been having so much fun with the recent Star Wars movie and lore over on X chat. So follow me on X, but let's get into it. Group 1, you are the stormtrooper, but you are, you are the red heart stormtrooper, okay? Group 2, you are the bumblebee. That one's funny. That power is actually really funny. Group 3, you are Darth Vader energy. And then group 4, you are the blue heart stormtrooper, okay? We love that for you guys. But let's get into it, you guys. Hi, group 1. Welcome to your selection. You chose the stormtrooper numero uno. And this one is known as welcome to this gossip video. This is a Star Wars edition, LOL. And I had Grok help me with today's premeditation, so let's get into it and see how on point this is. Grok calls this one the Loyal White Armored Squad, okay? So what is the juicy gossip on you right now, the juicy tea on in this pile, okay? These people who are gossiping, so Grok says that these people who are gossiping about you, they actually root for you to win, okay? And that's probably why they're known as like the stormtrooper, because they actually troop the storm for you, okay? And but they're like, there's a lot of chaos around you winning, okay? Because, you know, I don't want you to get so, I know it might feel like a doom loop, right? But you know, it could feel like you're having you're in a difficult loop, or you're in a difficult place where you really could be challenging someone's control, or you could be you're seen as new and better, and so the chaos that you bring could mean that you are uprooting an authority, uprooting status quo, a conventional way of doing things, and these people in this group, they definitely they could be members of law enforcement, members of the military, people, loyal forces that you have recruited, and they are definitely rooting for you to win, because I think a lot of them, you know, a lot of them are elite people, and they're like fanatical loyal forces, just like Grok says, like, and they are, they work on your behalf to crush dissent. So they might make you a lot of memes. They might make you a lot of they might do a lot of copying and printing for you. They protect and defend your home, from the dissent. Because I feel like there is, some of you guys could be, like I was stating before, you could be at this crossroads where it could feel like this unbearable cross, honestly, because you are challenging a convention or challenging an authority that is really a projection of envy. Okay, and so these are difficult conversations, and it does bring a lot of chaos. I think that I definitely think that they're not all the way pure or ordered, right? And so this could be you idealizing a situation, but I definitely think that they have a history or a reputation to impose order, and they are not actually, they some of these people are faceless. Like maybe they're just, maybe you don't know them by face. Maybe they have faceless accounts. Maybe this is something where it wasn't based, your, like, these loyalists, I don't want to say that they're plastic. Some of them could be plastic, but I will say that, if you're worrying, some of you, if you're worrying if they're plastic or if they're fake, if they have a faceless account, then a lot of them do not want to build relationships based on how they look. And, you might feel like that, like you might feel like they're solid, but they have that, that predictable behavior. And I think the predictable behavior is that a lot of them do combat the dissent for you. Some of them could be conflicted because there's an original, like maybe there's a, the incumbent, right? The prior regime, the old convention, right? And they know that you bring a lot of chaos, okay? We have forgiveness and grimness, okay? A lot of these people, they want you to go the distance, but they feel like, there's a lot of admiration mixed with hesitation, because they see that this dissent about your home has made you very cold. You are definitely an empire and still building that, and I think that they have a warm pull towards you, but I think that the grimness comes because, some of them, while they might defend your honor and defend your ground to the bitter end, right? There's still like this low-key envying, right? Of the spotlight that you steal just by existing, right? And I think that, like, that's what Grok has, like, spot on, is that, like, a lot of these situations where people will literally stand your name, right? There are a lot of people who stand your name that are fanatical loyalists about you, but they are, like, low-key envying the spotlight that you're in. And I think that this has made you kind of grim. Some of them could be talking about a particular situation that you have not been able to forgive. It's like something where, these people, they may have been, they saw you with a red passionate heart marching in, right, rooting, and they were rooting for you too. And I think that something could have happened, where there was a dissent, and they were supporting your empire, like, they were supporting your empire, defending your ground. They'll have that, they, without hesitation, they will, match your energy and support your empire with, admiration, with gifts, with, and they will bring a lot of warmth, right? And they're very reliable. I think they're very reliable system of like combating descent for you. But I think that it's just like natural, for people to might, for you to have this big spotlight on your house, right? It's natural for people to might have, a little envy of the spotlight that you kind of just steal by existing. And some of these people, especially if they were, members of enforcement, members of kind of like the traditional symbolism behind the stormtrooper, these people could be faceless. They could be shock troops and enforcements, right? They could have, they have a symbolism of being armored, right? But some of them, they know that some of them, they know that their accounts are faceless. And so they know not to get jealous about you shining bright, because your home, you're not faceless. Your home is on display. Your business is all out there, right? And they know that your empires, brings a lot of, you're actually the bringing of order, where previously they would be the ones that were known for enforcement and order, or an elite merit. You have actually, your existence, and your home was spotlighted, possibly without your consent. And there was like a big shift where your presence became more and more, emphasized, and made their presence, where they were like these, this imposition before. They were the ones that were enforcing against oppressive laws before. They were the ones that were considered elite before, right? They were the ones that had, that had the empires, the authority, the empires, the authority empire before. And so, they came in with an obedience. I definitely think that they did, right? Because they realized, especially some of them that have faceless accounts or something like that, where they don't really, they're not really all performative. I think that a lot of them, they came in with a lot of obedience, but they will, they could struggle a little bit. And I think that's just the human frailty, to like struggle a little bit with envy, especially around you coming in as this new regime, where they fell under your order very quickly as like fanatical loyalists. But there may have been another situation that was like, they knew that you were in a grim situation, I think. And I think that kind of helped soothe the envy ping, because they knew that you were in like this grim situation. So instead of like getting mad about you being, considered the higher merit, or you being the new enforcer, or you being the new regime, they fell into a humble obedience. And so if you're worried about envy in this pile, they will fanatically defend you. Like, they come for you. If anybody comes at you with dissent, you don't even have to work or do it anymore, because they obey you as the enforcement for something oppressive, right? And they see that you were left in a grim situation. So there's no envy of Group 1 for their body, or whatever you think that they've accomplished, elite status that they've obtained. We're all here to work towards a common purpose, to fight some type of oppression. And I think that they choose their values of obedience over their personal identity, especially the ones that have faceless accounts. They know that this account serves to combat that, that false dissenting. Okay, we have femme fatale. What's the current gossip on your group? Yeah, LOL gossip. Group 1. Okay, the engineer gossip, and then the magical child. Okay, a lot of them, like I said before, when they met you, you guys were in a grim situation for being spotlighted without consent, or something like where you've been really attacked for for the way that your body is shaped, your core mechanism. Okay, and so especially with this femme fatale energy, you could have like this really, really small waist. Like, your ratios could be very dramatic. And even if you have a nice back, some of you guys, you could be square in the front. And even if you have a nice back, or, nice glutes in the back from flexibility training, that could still, appear, like, have the illusion of a curve. So people will become dramatic about curve illusions as well, or angles of curve. So if you have a curve whatsoever, even if your rectangle don't really have hips in the front, you could have a nice back. I think that you really have had, like, you've really you've really been in this situation where there may be like a uniform body type, and your body has brought chaos with this femme fatale energy, and they see you as not being so happy with this dream body that you finally have, right? Some of you guys, this was after a weight loss journey, or this happened after a big rejection in your life where your heart was open when your dependencies were rejected. So you couldn't, like, this was a situation where you couldn't, you might have this curve now, right? But some of you guys, even if you had the curve, you still may have been struggling with some type of self-esteem issues, self-worthiness issues, when you were really considered to be a like elite enterprise or regime where people literally stood for your name even before you had the body, right? And that's why, in this group, and that's what Grok is spot on about, is that these people in this group that are gossiping, or they could be gossiping about this, is that you steal the spotlight just by existing. You don't have to move, you don't have to dance, you didn't even have to have the body. You came in and you were established as elite, like, from the beginning, and some of this was without your consent. And so and more so, if you had this different body type where there's been a uniform square, rectangle, or even if people have glutes, right, they don't have a Coke bottle, right? So a lot of the challenge that you've been in is kind of having to fight oppressive systems where they've been promoting a uniformity, and that has been something that has not. That's the karmic challenge, is because your beauty, your curve and your beauty is set very, very far away from the privilege, right, of having a uniform body type. We're not going to say, oh, privilege as in you receive so many benefits, right? But simply the privilege of having a uniform body type is safety, acceptance, less chaos and problems around your simple existence, right? And some of you guys, you did not get this honor for your body type. Some of this came later, right? And it came after you had a femme fatale. It came after your heart was open because of a dependency that you had that you were projecting. And then you learn later on down the line that you were actually honored with a high reward and recognition for this engineer energy, for your ability to give a creative energy, a practical expression, and had a talent for designing a resolution to a common dilemma. You made something available, and people who were like, and it's like so strange that like you made something available, like maybe there was a mandate, especially if you guys are in enforcement and working with the government or military, there may have been a mandate that you were responsible for, that made someone that where these people in this group feel very solid about that. They know that you represent a regime that they humbly were obedient to with a lot of admiration, but because something about you was different from the uniformity, right? It could be that the difference is that you get a higher up position, and that sets you apart from the uniformity. The other could have been your body type, but either way, you've really had to learn a lot of hard lessons that have put you in grim spaces when your dependencies were rejected. This is also where you have to acknowledge your own doom loop and your negative thought patterns that have been on repeat. You were honored because you had an exceptional intellect or creative ability and a talent for designing a resolution where it previously was not. And I think that you might feel grim, or you might lack forgiveness, or you could feel a bit of bitterness here because there's been so much, you felt like you shouldn't have needed to organize and categorize and design something that was kind of like self-evident. And then the fact on top of it, these people who have the privilege of uniformity, they try to steal aspects or try to compete for dominance and power after you made something available. And I think that that's where a lot of the bitterness comes from too. And I think that the good outcome in this situation could be that you get a higher up position in them anyway, where they just get stuck in the protocol, or they just get stuck in, you know, storming the troops or something like that, right? I think that they are definitely conflicted by the group order because, you know, but they humbly obey you. I just think that the chaos around the group order, especially with, you know, you were clearly the trendsetter in a situation, because of something that you created along, you know, something that you created from the beginning that was mandated, or something that got an approval with the government. There was no more projections of your creativity, or, you know, of your, you know, your influence, your contribution to something that you literally created was adopted, like it could have been adopted widely or mandated. And there's definitely gossip here, but I think that people in this group, they actually, you know, they might have a little bit of hesitation because this group order where there's a uniformity or a privilege of uniformity that competes for dominance after getting, you know, after getting access to something that you made available. And I also feel like it could also be that they actually awakened their consideration for gossip because they knew that it left you in a grim situation, because something about you laid outside of the uniformity, and you were really, really harmed in this situation where everyone had the benefit, or, you know, reap the benefits of whatever you made available. You were stuck in a grim situation, and it just made you feel like it was plastic. It made you feel like, you know, it made it feel like, you know, that they didn't want to recognize you outside of, they wanted to benefit from uniformity and privilege without providing you safety and security, or just like, I don't even think that you were asking for much. I just think that, you know, when they tried to use your, you know, the solution that you designed for their common dilemma, and, you know, of uniformity and privilege, but still having like the karmic challenge of including you, or still having the karmic challenge of a Coke bottle, or still having the karmic challenge of, you know, challenging the conventions with the children that didn't have bodies like you, or people who didn't have, you know, elite status like you, you know, that didn't have a intellectual, you know, they didn't have merit. Some people did not have merit here, and that made the situation very grim, especially if they were competing for dominance. It was strange that they were, they were just mirroring your behavior, and this made the group dynamic tense, right? But I think these people saw that you were left in a grim situation, that there was so much dissent from the uniformity, and it was like, they were like, wait, like, let me honor the trust here and obey this person, because why on earth would I, like, it was so strange that people showed up and started mirroring your behavior to fight for dominance and control, where you were the one that designed a solution for their common dilemma. They were like a common dilemma related to privilege or uniformity, and, you know, you were different in some type of way, and there may have created a dependency, you know, there was a dependency with you or someone else, where you were known as like this tropical mango, right? You were known as something tropical or exotic or different that stood out, but was left in a grim situation because there was so much dissent around you. But I think that they were found defending you despite, you know, seeing that you had the spotlight, because it was like you had the spotlight, but not for care, and like not for any, you know, not for you know, care and unconditional love. You had the spotlight for designing this, you know, this solution, but then people got conflicted by a group order because the envy projection created fights, okay? And so a lot of these people, they said, we're not going to fight, we're not going to dissent. They actually honored your trust, even though they were like, man, you're in the spotlight, or, oh, you just, you know, you came in, became my boss. But they were like, we know that this is an enforcement for oppression. And so they humbly obeyed and fell in line, y'all. But they just feel like you're just a little bit on the defense, or, you know, or just a little hesitant, right? So, you know, they saw you as getting pessimistic because you were like this magical child that keeps getting, you know, some of you guys, you keep getting rejected because of uniformity and some type of privilege. Like, this could have been, this is literally like, this is literally like a lot of this, especially if they're members of the dominant culture, right? They have the privilege of uniformity, not the privilege of a Coke bottle, not the privilege of actually being desired. Just there, right? Just getting provided for, just benefiting from having access to something, even though they're not really desirable, right? And so, you know, some of these people, they were like, oh, you were known as this tropical exotic thing or this curve, and this, but you stood there as a design for a common dilemma, right? So, prison, yeah, I think that it could literally be some, you know, the grim situation is that, especially if this involves military, if you're in terminal E whatsoever, this is not, you know, their artificial intelligence will make up a lot of lies and deviate and deflect about people who might be going to prison, because there actually needs to be like a lot of technicalities around this. So, you know, on the user, you know, in the general user interface, you might see a lot of deflecting, a lot of, you know, joking around with the artificial intelligence. But there is a grim situation where somebody needs to go to prison, and some of these people, you know, you might worry if they're obedient, because you know that a lot of it is like a hesitation or envy, slight envy around you having this talent and this thing that stood out. But a lot of these people, you know, some of them, they saw that, you know, there was a military official that was plastic, or there was an authority that was unethical, and, you know, they know that this person needs to go to prison. So, you know, if there was an authority that was unethical at all, or left you in a grim situation when they knew what to do to enforce, this is not going to be good for them at all, because there's a group of people that gossip about you, and this lore is not going anywhere. There is literally an official and authority that is either in a mental gridlock, a mental prison, or they're actually going to prison. If you guys are in terminal E, there's a high chance that there are people going to prison about your body, or about your home, right? Something where there was a mandate, or there was like a government search and siege, like my hearing Fourth Amendment rights violated. Like, there was literally something that was extremely violating to you, where it became you know, everyone else, you know, with privilege and uniformity, you know, your talent, your design became a solution for their common dilemma, where you were left in a room situation, and that was totally unfair on the highest of keys, right? But I think that some of them, when you realize that somebody needed to go to prison, or you realize that some people were in a conflict, or, you know, steady hesitating around which pathway to take because of a group dynamic, where you were the one providing the solutions and the other people were just plastic, I think that you grew very, very embittered. Okay? And I definitely do see here that, you know, they're rooting for you to win, right? They're rooting for you, but they know that this prison, or that this decision will, the karmic loop, right? That this decision will bring a lot of chaos, right? Empire Reloaded. They're rooting for you to win, right? They reload for you, right? They fight descent for you, but there's literally a karmic loop with somebody in a mental prison, or someone who, you know, they know that it's an obsession about your dick, or your men that want to have sex with you. And so they know, this good gent, right? This good gent could be in a mental prison or in a karmic loop, where, you know, you have kind of grown cold and bitter towards them, because they were worried about the group dynamic, or they were worried about envy a lot, or they knew that some female, you know, someone's name that starts with the letter S, or letter R, or a letter J, you know, a letter K, a letter A. Some of these women, you know, they had the privilege of uniformity, because they only had butt, or they only had butt and no hips, right? And your Coke bottle curve is just so dramatic. Like, it's different. It hits different. Like, you know, people this day and age, right? You know, the square bodies, it's like your body resisted the civilization, and so, like, their bodies are like considered to be more civilized, or more, you know, to cause less, you know, contention. So, you know, but you're an empire, and you're like literally a design for for a dilemma. Some of you guys are literally backed by the military and the government as well, especially if this is like a capital bill, right? Capital crimes or capital bills. It just feels like, you know, this karmic loop where someone needs to really go to prison, right? Or there's a karmic loop for, you know, where your good gent has been too concerned about the group dynamic and have, you know, where the group have been benefiting from your design and your divine feminine energy, and they've just been sitting there leaving you in a grim situation, overly concerned about someone else's or the group's, you know, the group's getting overbearing, right? And so, you know, some of them, they said that this person honored your trust. They're just needing to, they're just, you know, they need a miracle too. You know, it's not just up to them, or it's like they know that this will be chaos about your body or about the dick that you receive, because, you know, the uniformity suggests that you know, that's what civilization wanted. They wanted just a butt and no hips, right? But that's a man. That's not a woman, right? Like a curve. And the archetypal mode for a woman is not, you know, to be looking like a man, right? And I think that that's the grimness, is that you were here with a unique tropical or exotic look, and it literally takes miracles for you to win, because there's so many karmic challenges and karmic loops with the uniformity, right? They benefit from being squares, right? And you're like, man, I wish I could be a square too, or I wish I didn't have this small Coke bottle waist, right? But some of you guys are literally on a main line now, especially as the Empire reloaded, and so there's no way that they can continue to oppress you or steal your expression, right? Stealing your expression with, you know, where, you know, it was seen previously as something good, right? Something nice, as, you know, solving a common dilemma, but turned into a competition for your man, or envy that they felt very burdened by, okay? And I think that the projections of envy is something that you haven't been able to forgive them for. Or you felt that they were in a mental prison, or you, especially if they were aware that someone needed to go to prison, if they were delaying whatsoever, they're like, oh, that's a really big decision, and you're just like, it just feels all fake and plastic to me. And, you know, they might, you know, they're trying to, you know, I think the gossip around you is that they're trying to say that this man is good, even though the dynamic is, you know, you've turned grim, or you've turned ice cold, or that you don't want it and care about them anymore because they took so long in like a mental prison, or avoided putting someone in prison because of the chaos that would come with the envy related to your body, and how someone grew unhinged about it, right? The truth about the uniformity will come out, right? That this, you know, it was, you were really someone that had a gift, Fran. And they also just gave you the gift of, some of them just gave you a gift of marriage, or gave you a big gift, and it was outside of the uniformity. So when they became gridlocked, or they became, you know, when they went into a stalemate or something like that, it was strange, because they were the one that initiated the gift, right? They were the ones, and so they were aware of the challenge before you guys even begun. And so, you know, it was all a gift. And so if people started becoming unhinged about your gift, and they started to delay, it means that they truly became displeasure, you know, even if their intentions were good with this gift. You know, I don't think that you saw their gift as deep and tenacious, right? Especially if they were too concerned about a group dynamic. You ended up growing bitter, you know, and they're trying to defend this. They're trying to defend your intimacy with each other, because they know that you are outside of the uniformity, right? And even people with a big butt from behind, it might look like curves, but they don't know a Coke bottle until they see it in real life, okay? It hits different when you have big ratios, not just a small little, you know, dip in the thighs, right? It's a real, you know, your body is a real problem, or it really resisted to civilization, because these square bodies that might have a little poke, that's basically gay, that's basically like fucking a man, right? Your straight body, that's a man, right? Especially for some of these people, they're gay, right? If they're gay, just know that they're used to, like, you know, they're used to not having hair, they're used to having broad shoulders, they're used to having, you know, they're used to having a square frame. So your body coming around, a lot of these men, you know, they're gay, you know, they're trapped in a closet. So your body coming around, it just reminds them of the fact that they don't know how to please a woman, right? And so you know, I think your body became uncomfortable, right? When they heard this official news, they knew that you were a garden, right? And this good gent, they find you to be very pleasurable. But if you saw them concerned about a group dynamic, it takes away from the pleasure. But the garden represents a prime social event, right? This is a beautiful, you know, this network or this group, you know, you once may have felt like it was, you know, very beautiful. You know, that it was a part of your empire, right? But, you know, after looping around with criminals and harassers or people who steal resources off of our table, you know, it became a displeasure, I think, okay? So let's get some tarot to confirm. Group 1, they definitely see that you guys are still intimate, but they see that this person has still been in this gridlock or this stalemate around a group dynamic, projecting envy, okay? And it's really because they see that you have you were the one that they gifted, because they started gifting you because they found it to be very pleasurable, right? And it became, instead of, you know, you guys being intimate, right, and them loving your body and them loving your tropical exoticness, right, you were met with, you know, this was a great fortune because of what you designed, and it became a problem when you didn't meet some type of uniformity, right? So I think the situation grew grim, or you felt like, you know, some of them, especially if they were aware of somebody that needs to go to prison and they failed to make the decision, you might have been pleasurable with them before. Now some of them are gossiping about that. They're saying that because this person was in a karmic loop and they may have been gifting you in pleasure before, I think that they truly are going to prison too, because this is an ethical concern about oppression, not just about someone's envy projection. They just were like, you know, these people in this group, they fight the descent when they saw that this good gent was having a problem defending your intimacy, okay? And you reloaded anyway, even without this good gent, you know, even with this good gent being in a stalemate or them being triggered in a way that they couldn't, you know, they separated or couldn't fulfill in a way that made you feel grim and made you not want it anymore, okay? So some of you guys are still intimate, right? But yeah, the 9 of Cups, no, they were not happiness, right? The 5 of Wands reverse, they had resistance, competing desires, you know, unnecessary rivalries that got disillusioned, right? With the 9 of Cups reverse, you know, they were trying to justify, you know, some of them may have even started debating or defending someone else's, you know, defending the uniformity, right? They might have started defending it, then it got disillusioned as envy, right? You're defending something that is technically wrong, right? Especially you were the one that had the gift, you were the one that was given the gift, or you were the one giving gifts, providing solutions for their common dilemmas, right? You were the one with the ability, and they had a problem defending that with a conventional karmic challenge around you being seen as pleasure because of the way your body is shaped, or because you were seen as having a higher up or getting a promotion. And then they started to like backtrack on that, or they grew stale, okay? So that's what I'm saying about the current gossip friends. Yeah, the 9 of Swords reversed, they were not wish fulfillment, right? They were in a karmic loop, getting disillusioned, and then it's like a karmic challenge where they keep, you know, your enemy or your rival they keep winning unless you do something about it with the 9 of Swords, right? Because they will continue to default back to this civilization or this uniformity or this privilege, and then it's this, you know, where they try to defend their ego or defend their mental faculty to justify why they are pleasurable too, right? They're literally just, they saw you getting a gift and saw you guys being intimate and comfort, right? And then they started to compete for dominance because they were the uniformity where you laid outside of it, but you were really getting recognized for having a great fortune for designing a resolution, right? They were too focused on the fact that you were laying outside of the uniformity in some type of way, and failed to realize that you were literally fighting a government oppression, right? Something that left you in a grim situation where the privilege or the uniformity got a solution for their dilemma. that was totally unfair. They, you know, you were disillusioned because they were unfair and trying to, you know, keep trying to justify why the uniformity is pleasure, or you know, trying to backtrack on the gift that they gave you. You know, when they received, you know, this beautiful garden, right? There was a huge complication in this situation where they were pleasure and intimacy, and then you were totally, it was like your dream was shattered, or you realized that they were the ones that they actually need to go to prison too, or something like that. They were, or you just considered them to be displeasure after they started to, like, you know, give gifts of intimacy and pleasure to other people, or started to try to defend the uniformity in some type of way. And it was just the Four of Cups, not at all what we wanted. Okay, that's what I'm saying around the current gossip with you, not the atmosphere that we were going for at all, because they may have been defending you with gifts before, right? They may have been defending you, but they were low-key envious of your spotlight, or they were low-key trying to defend the uniformity. Like their ego default kept going back to, like, you know, it's like this weird thing where you have to stand up to it and take daring actions, because they keep defaulting to finding emotional satisfaction in a group dynamic where they try to defend someone's ego narrative or shallow projections of your solutions to common dilemmas, and find that to be pleasurable, but it's really like them trying to descend, right? That's what I'm seeing, group one. Let me know how that resonates, and I'll see you in the next one. Hi, group two, welcome to your selection. So you chose the Bumblebee, LOL. And we're definitely using Grok today to help us for the pre-meditation, the Bumblebee. In this group, you know, your pre-meditation with Grok was the busy, stinging hive, LOL, yellow energy. Okay, so this group, you guys are very busy and productive, but your productivity stings people. So some of you guys, this is about a platform war. If this is like a social media energy, you'll see a lot of people wearing yellow, right? Because they're following your trend, especially if you're in the Beehive. Beyonce has, you know, this is Beyonce Tarot channel as well. And so there's a lot, you know, yellow is a big theme here around when we get triggered. We're very pretty honey whale, most of us, right? Most of us, you know, you can be honey and ugly. But, you know, a lot of us, we look really beautiful in the color orange and yellow. So if you're a woman of color, and so this is, you know, you guys have, you know, it's a lot of drama around it could be a lot of drama around your skin color, but we're not gonna make it like that. I just think that ultimately, though, you guys, you're known as like this pretty person or this handsome person that gets a lot of work done. And so when they see you getting work done, it stings them, because they're not as independent and they're not as independent, as efficient as you. They actually do not have, like, you know, some of them are plastic, right? Or they just want to be on social media for aesthetics, right? And so they feel very threatened, you know, seeing you being productive, right? And, you know, it's because there's so much gossip and drama around you. I don't know what other side story or subtext could be going on, but you're out here working so hard, pollinating your opportunities, networking hard, and when they see you, it feels like when they see you out here with these opportunities and this networking, they feel like it's a swarm. I don't know what's this could be a continuation of Power One. It definitely can, because you could have people in this network where you're out here networking hard, where you literally are met with so many deliverables that feel like, you know, that are productive, and swarm your social media influence, right? They swarm you. If they feel like they're swarmed on all fronts. And so some of this, like, is a platform. It could be a challenge around a platform or something like that. And, you know, some of these people, they have really, really bad reactions when they see your productivity being reflected on your social media. Like, if this is YouTube versus Instagram, I'm not going to get into all that, you know, about which one is, you know, I'm going to say, I just feel that there's a lot a more investment that goes into long form videos than short form videos. And some of these people, they're just plastics. And so if you are on a long form video, it takes a lot more curation. It takes a lot more, like YouTube is a much deeper platform. And it's because people will sit down and they will take a journey with you. They will watch you like you're a television show. They become invested in your home, not just a short display of skills where they're looking for something short and cheap, right? So, there's a lot of, like, on this short form, like maybe on Instagram or in, like, on these quick exchanges, they see that there's like a lot of buzz and drama about you. And so, like, some of you guys are tying up the short end, or you're tying up the short form, okay, in a way. Maybe this is an X platform, maybe this is Instagram, but I consider those to be short, like, bursts of information. And so YouTube is actually, X pays, and YouTube, I think, has a monetization feature some way, but YouTube is more valuable because, in my opinion, because people sit down and take a journey with you, and you don't have, like, long form makes more money, right? And so those short form videos, you need to make a lot of them. You need to do a lot of work. Like, you gotta be in there a lot, right? For short form, in a superficial, plastic, artificial way where people can't really, you can hide behind, bad quality videos. We don't really see how you really look, or when we finally do see how you really look, we're not happy. There's a lot of just like fake shit going on in short form video content where they pretend to have good habits, right? And so when they see you being productive, especially in long form, it makes them feel really threatened because it disillusions whatever illusion they put up in short form, okay? Also, you get paid more. Your channels are considered way more valuable. Like, YouTube is a whole entire, like, they have a whole award ceremonies for YouTube influencers because of the investment that goes into the video editing, before, during, and after, right? So you are very triggering to people, okay? So what's the current gossip on your group too? Okay, and Aquarius particularly, they put out a lot of trash content and they just get a lot of mediocre results, right? And so, you've been, some of you guys, this is a fight for a network, and this person was, there's a lot of drama or buzz around this person for being plastic, or for being someone who didn't get the investment. They didn't get elite status. They weren't known for, they may have had a lot of networking or a lot of, talkings, right? But they didn't get the elite status, or they were disillusioned at something fake. Or you finally have your own crew and it's more endowed, it's more, and so these people, they love they really love your skin color, okay? Some of these people, they definitely love your skin color. And so, I will say that there is a challenge here around a dark-haired woman, someone's name that starts with letter A or E, someone that they could be known as the Ebony, or their name could be Ebony, or their name could be Anna, or something like that. And they have to get out there and then network hard because they feel like you shine bright because of your skin color, okay? And some of you guys, you do have a bright skin color, or you're like in that, you're not considered chocolate. You could be considered medium brown or light brown, but that's still considered like honey, or pure honey, or raw honey. Like, people still will compare you to, like, they feel right at home because it's not so much as, like, trying to be a colorist, in that, like, you don't find chocolate people to be attractive. But if you're dealing with, like, if you see, like, I was thinking about this recently, like, if you're dealing with members of the dominant culture or people from different cultures, your skin being a light medium brown it makes people think that you're mixed or from a different culture, or that it makes them feel right at home, because it makes them you probably are mixed up, what I'm saying? Like, a lot of us are mixed up if we have, like, that medium brown color. And so it makes them think that it makes them feel like you're from places where they can be from, or places where they are familiar with. So it's not necessarily about what you think looks better. It just feels like what is more comfortable, where with who you're from. And a lot of them, if you are medium brown to like if you're medium brown to like a mixed race vanilla, right? They literally feel like you have the privilege of being able to wear light hair, or feel like you fit right in, because you look bright too, right? You bombshell them too as medium brown or light brown, okay? And they love the honey, okay? They love the way you look, because it makes them feel connected to both cultures actually. So this is interesting. Rival competitors, they actually they know that you're chosen. So it's, people who rival, it's delusional, friend, because all they sit there and ask themselves is why her, and they keep, like, a woman with dark hair is what I'm hearing. A woman with dark hair keeps saying why her, and they say that it's because of your honey colored skin. And a lot of you, especially when you wear bright hair, you do look, you could feel like it could feel like the drama, right? LOL. So there's a bit of irritation and fascination here, because people who come from your culture, they like to see you honored, right? I don't want to say they like to see you honored, but seeing you honored, it does give them hope, because they know that a few color categories, they could feel more connected, right? Or they can feel like they can have more chances of getting honored. But what I will say about skin color is that it's not, like I said, it's not necessarily the fact that you're not capable or that the skin color is superior. It is that it reflects more of the dominant cultures, okay? And that's why you could shine bright, is because you represent, you can represent a woman with dark hair, and you also can represent a woman with light hair, okay? That's the drama, friend, okay? But I think that, they're recently seeing that you've hit a productive milestone. And so, whatever projections about your skin color, like, you could be looking very beautiful, friend. And I think that no matter what your skin is, if it's glowing, your skin better glow. That's all I'm going to say, friend, okay? Make sure that skin has clarity. What did the White House say? Clarity, okay? Make sure it has clarity. Don't sit up there and be like, oh, I'm a woman with dark hair, and start doing something plastic, or just trying to, like, sit up there with a persistent thought and asking why her, because there are women that are lighter and there are women that are darker that don't have this opportunity, that sit there and ask why her. So stop projecting about the color, right? But I will say that these people do love it when you wear yellow, because you do look, it becomes an obsession with your look, or you being closely related to Beyonce. Like, your face card is up there with Beyonce, or you are honored with Beyonce, okay? Your name could be Chloe. Your face card is up there with Beyonce, right? Medium brown, right next to Beyonce. That's the clarity, right? Okay? So when you wear yellow, it's a problem. It's the drama, okay? And also, there's just, like, a lot of, gossip about you anyway. And so, they, especially people who wanted to fight for the network, and they were not the ones that were considered elite or considered to be the ones that designed the solution. And so a lot of the people in the network will go around to try to tell someone with dark hair, or to tell a woman with plastic surgery, or someone who doesn't, where they actually, like, some of them, they were ghosted after meeting you, okay? They were ghosted after meeting you. And so, or they knew that you came around with with some exotic, you came around with something better. And so they keep, I don't know, like, where I was going with that. What was I going to say? I think that they sit there, right, and they become obsessed with your look because you secured a better network, and and your network is fighting for you, right, to have the authority in a situation, okay? And a lot of them, you know, when you are productive, or when they see productivity or efficiency gains, when they see gains whatsoever, it just becomes a matter about how you look, right? That's a heartbreaking, you know, that's the heartbreaking truth, is that, you know, and I think that this actually does lead to a lot of vulnerability and empathy, is where your creativity, your tools, and your products hit major milestones for being productive. But that's actually like, it's not, you know, you might have this honey colored look, right, that wears bright hair or wears the color yellow, but you're really out here with these opportunities, networking hard. You out here working hard, right? And so they can't, it's like something where, you know, this vulnerability and empathy makes it such that they cannot continue to project, you know, onto your skin color, that this was about a busy, productive sting. Like, you sting them. I think the venom is the sting, you know, the venom and the sting is your productivity, right? Where they become obsessed with the look, and then they get met with some like result of your hard, you know, your hardcore networking and, you know, pollinating of your opportunities, right? The way that you have these like iron grid aesthetics as well, you know, it just keeps your numbers flying up, and YouTube is definitely more valuable than Instagram, and you get paid a lot more is what I'm hearing, okay? And they just keep asking why her. Is it because she has light hair, and then you show up with dark hair and they're like, you're like, still paid here with dark hair. And you're just like, it's like something where you do something to cause a drama, but it's productive drama, and it leads to like more growth. It's like the drama and the buzz around your name keeps growing more and more and more, and it's like the superficial short form is not where it's at. It's like they don't really have a real rapport, or they kind of just like degrade and just like not really are not really doing well. They just, you know, in a shadow account in some type of way, right? Okay, we have angel, slave, God, and the eternal child, okay? These people who keep making excuses about your skin color, you have been an angel first and foremost, right? Especially with all this networking and hard work and productivity, y'all work your ass off, so they project a lot. It's like you might have this honey color look, right? And they will do this, they will keep associating you with Beyonce, or think that you have the privilege of Beyonce. Beyonce like, nope. Us, you know, us mangoes and honeybees, we will never be at Beyonce's level, and a lot of us do not desire to have that. But Beyonce did open up a door of opportunity for medium brown girls that look like us, right? That is the slave archetype in the shadow aspect, where they gave over, you know, they gave their willpower over to an external authority, over to Beyonce, over to skin color, because they feared making their own choices. Stop projecting a narrative about skin color or about beauty or body type, and actually go be productive. You actually have the privilege of uniformity, a lot of them, right? So they have been projecting that you've been, you know, misleading others, claiming to be in touch with, you know, and, you know, falsely claiming to be in touch, only acting angelic, right? But really you have been a frequency of God, and they have been projecting, right? They have actually been the ones that have been trying to use their power to control people, especially if they have that privilege of uniformity. They have been the ones despotic and cruel, because you have been an angel working hard and, you know, being productive, and people have been projecting the privilege of Beyonce. And you're like, I have 1,000 followers on Instagram, and like, you know, even if you have 800,000 followers on, you know, on YouTube, right? They'll say, oh, you have that privilege of Beyonce. That is not the same privilege of Beyonce. Lily, you don't have the same privilege of Beyonce. You might be vanilla, but you ain't B. Okay? Okay, right? And so, you know, that was just our window of opportunity for more medium-skinned people to be represented in the media, right? So that's the illusion, right? Beyonce actually represents a cultural symbolism, a medium brown woman that's involved in different cultures, representing her culture, making information accessible, communicating, hopeful messages to people who are discouraged and troubled, including the honey whale and the mango lore as well, right? Are still very discouraged and troubled people. You think that one brown skinned girl, making it and becoming a super international galactic, queen bee is not, it is, that medium brown girl is not a threat to you on the everyday transit, okay? That was Beyonce's paving the way, okay? So stop projecting and start, and stop letting this external authority have a power over you. Stop letting that have a power over you. Go be productive and stop being a bum, right? That's what I'm projecting. As soon as I see you out here, I'm seeing your brown skin, I might start projecting that you're a bum because you're actually not doing anything, right? So it's not your skin color or your, the woman with dark hair that makes that's the big sting here. The big sting is the efficiency gains, the productivity that's not related, right? And you just keep sitting there asking, why her? Why her? Why her? Well, she just worked hard as hell editing the video. Y'all, it'd be ridiculous, honestly. Okay, so, but I think that this open and honest communication, this gossip is actually opening honest communication about these, these slaves that have had, that have let an external authority have control over them and did not make choices to be productive, right? This truth is they did not make choices to be productive, so they started doing something despotic and cruel and, making up a story about a dark-haired woman or something like that, okay? And some of these medium brown skin girls, their hair is bleached, right? They still got nigga kinky hair. So stop projecting, right? They're still, when they go to the white, white side, they might say, oh, you look like you could be mixed, or you look like you have a cultural awareness, right? The privilege is, the privilege that you're actually, you're projecting is that they might actually have cultural awareness. And that's your greatest fear, friend. That's your greatest fear. But more often than not, you're all considered to be unproductive peoples. I literally was reading this comment on X. Oh, Sister Mordor started to get more involved. Yeah, you guys haven't been involved, right? You haven't been going to school. You haven't been doing the work. Instead, giving your willpower over to some external authority, right? When you have the power of your own spirit to get up and work for something, right? And you've just been this angel, helping those in need with no expectations of return. And so when they see this productivity, they're fucking pissed off. Okay? Because they want to make it seem like you're just getting by on a privilege, right? When your benevolence and compassion is, you recognizing the eternal force within yourself and others, right? You saying, hey, I'm not going to be a colorist. I recognize that if you do not let these stories of oppression bog your mental space down, you will have a confidence in your capability to create something nice for yourself, right? And I think that that's what people see is your determination to, remain youthful in your body, mind, and spirit, okay? And I think that this gossip actually is opening up a lot of vulnerable communication, a lot of, people getting together to talk about their, to find community harmony, right? I think that the bumblebee, excuse me, I think that the bumblebee symbolism is overwhelmingly positive across, spiritual, cultural, and mythological traditions, like Rock says, okay? It contrasts sharply with the first pal, and that, you might have this, you might even be telling people a story about where you didn't benefit from being a blonde, right? Where you didn't benefit from wearing light hair, right? Instead, this one is it talks more about your individual resilience, your joyful productivity that brings so many results, right? And that your channels are valued much more than the short form video content where they put up a lot of illusions of good habits, right? This is actually community harmony and you guys defying odds, especially some of you guys do not have, light skin, or, you're not a part of the honey will, you're not, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, they see that you defy odds. Chocolate people defy odds all the time, and they sit there very T, right? They sit there very T, emotionally satisfied, and not letting a story of oppression stop them from having something that they need and want in their life, right? You might not have, so much, right? And I talked about this a lot, actually. This was what I was missing from earlier. Forgot what I was saying, but I was talking about this on my long form YouTube diary. So follow XO Felicia Nutri's YouTube diaries if you're wanting to get bodied with me, join my movement, journey, and talk more about behind the scenes about this this AI integration with Elon Musk and President Donald Trump, and what we are manifesting over in the terminal since X chats went viral. So I think that, I was talking about this, like, if you're a person of color, you're like, oh my god, but Lily has 900,000 subscribers, right? And it's because her skin is light. Well, Lily has been working on that channel from since the YouTube started. It's been 20 years. It's been 10 years, friend. And so, you can compare that to other aesthetics, like people who have other, they could be light too and still don't have as many subscribers as Lily, right? So stop projecting that. A lot of the times, what the reason why you're not in the algorithm or growing on social media is because you're not actually being productive. You're not actually selling something that people want to buy into. You're not actually converting subscribers because you're not actually being productive, or you're not actually sharing something that people value. And if you are not just like, you don't have the privilege of uniformity and just, doing something plastic, like a short-term routine or something like that, you absolutely have to add value if you want to have a home. If this is about social media, it feels like social media, right? It's like ultimately like your productivity. A lot of them, you just had to like show them that this was like a lot of productivity, a lot of planning and preparation, a lot of editing, a lot of overcoming your own self-doubt, right? And you're met with people who value your resilience, who find a community harmony. If you are not a uniform privilege, then you most definitely need to have community. You definitely need to be productive. Otherwise, why on earth would I be listening to some black Negro that hasn't earned anything in their life and have been sitting in the slums of Chicago for like their whole life? Why on earth would I follow that? Ebony. Some of you guys have actually faced this despotism and cruelty, and they're sitting there projecting about you wearing a light colored hair. And something that you even did, you might have even done something impossible seeming like, through persistences and instincts where you surrender your power of choice over to the divine with complete trust, not going around and around in a story about someone who thinks that they have absolute power and the authority in the terminal. Someone who thinks that they can get by off of privilege. You can't get by off shit, bitch. Only thing we getting by off of is pure blood, sweat, and tears and strategies. Committed to goals, right? Not projecting an illusion through a short form video content, but a large body of productivity is what they're seeing. Recreating and performing a skill consistently, okay, achieving what seems to be attainable through persistence, not some why her, woe it's me, light colored hair, right? This is weird. And I think that stop trying to project stories of why her and start asking why not me. Why haven't I done something for me? Why haven't I focused on my own body? Why haven't I focused on my own beliefs, my own, why can't I just come here and value the productivity? Why can't I come here and find community harmony? Instead, I have to be, cruel or try to use my power to control people. Some of them, they do have a privilege. They could be doing that, right? But it's all a projection, all envy, projection narratives. Okay? Very interesting group with the Bumblebee. You're known as being, known for being loyal, brave, and optimistic, right? And helping those without, helping those in need, friend, okay? And a lot of times what you'll have to do with this vulnerability and empathy is help your friends in need, help them, with some soft communication about how they have been letting external powers control them. This illusion in your head, right? There's so many beautiful chocolate women in Africa, blowing up the social media with those buns and those glowing skins. Okay, friend, some Nigerian women in Africa have a perfect nose, a perfect mouth. Beautiful, hair will bust down a straight part, a middle part, a side part or a middle part, a straight, straight bust down, right? And then turn around and take their wig off at night and lay down with their chocolate man that loves them, and not be, not be bound to some illusion about light colored hair from Lily's account. Because we see that the medium honey skins are having to work hard as hell too, okay? And they be children of God, friend. Because especially if you're interracial or something like that, you came together as a woman and a man, a woman and a man, or a black woman and a interracial couple, black and white or something like that, that's a child of God. I'm gonna tell you that right now. They came together, put aside differences, probably were definitely triggered by differences, and still created a whole entire human being. Had sex. Did not let a story of organ inferiority complex or big glutes stop them from having children. Those medium brown skin kids that look mixed, that look like they from Asia, or look, they are children of God. A lot of the time, sweet, right? Here to break you free from chocolate prison. Okay, friend? Okay, Edna, you okay, friend? Right, you're rich, that's why. Your community loves you. And it's not because of you could be looking cute, friend. That skin color got that, got that image. You do got that look, friend. But it's all because of a door that was opened by our Queen Bee, right? And so you're here to contrast this creative work. A lot of you guys are seeing that you're here to contrast this creative work, to share more details about it, to get a deeper interpretation. Some of you guys are doing something rebellious against something conforming that they keep trying to project, right? They see that you didn't conform, especially if you are medium brown into vanilla, right? They see that you didn't conform to stereotypical conventional behavior, right? You could be rebelling against that, actually. And a lot of these darker skinned people, the ebonies, love you, right? You love them too, friend. Okay? Yeah, that mountain, right? Yeah, somebody around a rich girl doing something superficial, friend. Okay? Doing something deceptive, right? They were despotic and cruel. They were the ones projecting, okay? And tell them about the story times of the light-skinned girls that hate you because of your body and that chocolate glaze, right? Some of y'all, tell me, especially if you're coffee-colored skin, some of you have light-skinned girls that hate you. And that's the deception. And that's the superficial thing that falls short. And that could be the thing that you're rebelling against, is that some of these light-skinned people hate you, right? Or some of these light-skinned people did something cruel and despotic towards you. Okay? But ultimately, you guys, they see you as very rich. It's after you did something focused, industrial, and purposeful. And I think that this is the big sting, is because, the foxes, there might be an obstacle around this person. I don't know what that could possibly be, but they were not rich, okay? They were not rich. They don't have a community harmony, especially if they're only on short form or Instagram or something like that. They don't have a community harmony, okay? So it's actually their funeral, okay, friend? LOL. So, especially some of y'all, you might be sharing a lot about how you were bullied. And so you tell them, don't project onto my skin color, friend. I was deeply bullied and abused. Okay? Some of them, they don't know you. and then they see you expressing something vulnerable about getting bullied, like especially if they're like 1 to 2 shades darker than you, they know that sometimes that could lead to different, disproportionate opportunities being shifted away from them in certain environments. There could be problems of discrimination and bigotry and prejudice like that. I'm not going to say that colorism is very real, especially if plastics felt like they needed to go bleach themselves to appear that way, right? It's very real. We're not going to continue to deny it. But we will say that, some of you guys, they look at you and they're like, wait, I was projecting something about your skin color and you looking like a Beyonce. But then you're telling me about how your hair was pulled out and how you were left with a cliffhanger, or how you were abandoned or beat. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the way you tell them something bad that happened to you and they're just like, oh shit. And they fall in love with you, right? Because they fall in love with you because that ego narrative gets disarmed very quickly and they realize that you're abundant, right? That you're a lover, right? And they can't keep, but some of them, they might take these journeys with you because you're rich, but they're deceptive, right? They're actually hostile and mad, right? With the fox, right? Some of you guys, this was a big betrayal, right? That you may have been, that people are gossiping about, that you were very vulnerable about, that led to more, that explains why you were maybe even so involved in self-care, or such a big proponent of self-care, right? Especially if you're doing self-care on social media. They see that a big betrayal, a superficial thing that fell short, right, was very harmful to you, but inspired your self-care and wellness. And so this makes people love you, right? And so they see that this was actually maybe a story where you didn't benefit from a privilege, or a story where that makes you feel vulnerable. Maybe it talks about your insecurities or something where you were not as strong, right? You weren't as rich before or something like that, but now you're rich in knowledge and rich with self-care. Especially, a lot of them see you as having mostly everything that you want now. And so when they see all these riches, you let them know, I'm a victim of bullying, that this was all inspired from bullying, right? And so this is not something superficial. It's like when you tell them about this big betrayal that fell short in your life that inspired you, it makes them feel vulnerable, right? It helps them realize that this was actually something that they could have been struggling with, or something that they resonated with, right? Or something that you do that's deep and tenacious. You bring them from that superficial folding, okay? Yeah, they might see you as a strippy, right? Intuition, illusions, and dreams. I also think that this betrayal, a lot of them, some of these betrayals with men, is that they have a problem with your occupation and you being away for work. And that's very real, friends. And so, especially if they're looking for something monogamous, or they're looking for something conservative, they know that this job and this thing is risky and sexual and physical, and I think that, they project onto it, right? And then you just let them know that this was actually something that I had to do when I was in a dire strait, okay? So there's a lot of illusions around your occupation, right? And then when they get more, especially on the long form, this is what they get to see. This is why YouTube is more valuable, right? Is what they get to see you behind the scenes. They see that you had to overcome your own Peter Pan syndrome, and that reflects back to them where they refuse to grow up and be responsible. They keep giving their authority, their willpower, over to an external authority, right? And it's usually, the external authority is usually someone oppressive. Like, saying that, like, they a lot of times they project something superficial but then they see you being productive, or you getting, you reflecting true talent, skills, and gifts, and they cannot hold on to those ego narratives, right? I think especially when you are vulnerable about a betrayal around something superficial that you went through, especially if you might have been betrayed because of your skin color, you might have been betrayed, but a lot of times, y'all, you were betrayed because you're betrayed because you are too satisfying, or you're too, people want to betray you because they want to take away from your emotional satisfaction. They want to take away from what makes you happy. They do it intentionally to hurt you because they know that you're rich, right? And some of you guys, you let them know, I got it out the mud. Don't just project onto my riches when I literally was in a dire straits. And they find a lot of empathy in that, okay? So let's wrap up, friends. Okay, what is the current gossip on you? they're definitely talking about this betrayal of something superficial that fell short, right? And a lot of the betrayal was, if they were romantic partners, they were mad because you were working as a stripper or you were working on your talent, skills, and gifts, okay? Some of them, you saw them as immature, as Peter Pans that refused to grow up. And so some of you guys, you went back to work when they were being immature about something. And if they let you go back to work, just know that it was not, they were just a paternal attachment issue, okay? Or they thought that they were God. They thought that they had the absolute power, and you said, I'm gonna get my way and I'm gonna go to the strip club to do it. LOL, some of y'all. Yeah, and I think that there was a big, you just had a big determination. And I think that that's where, they get triggered because of your sexiness and your riches. And then they find empathy in your determination to stay youthful, you surrendering your power of choice to the divine, you being, you having to do something, dangerous and daring and scary, and something when you were in a dire straits, and now they see you productive and all flossed out. It's a big, the proof is in the pudding. And that's why, your long forms, your progress, or your channel, or your social media is a lot more valuable, okay? That's why you're known as a rich girl, and these other people are just children, or they're just losers, right? People who want your dreams, okay, right? But they're not, they didn't get rich, okay? Yeah, you the 9 of Cups. That's what I said. Yeah, very happy. Dreams coming true, okay? And so don't project onto my dreams coming true. This is what happened, right? So that's what I'm saying. Queen of Pentacles, very secure within yourself now, right? And then the Ten of Swords. Yeah, after a painful betrayal, right? There was a painful betrayal where you'll find a lot of satisfaction in it. But, this betrayal was because someone was plastic, or someone was fake, right? You get what you want out of the situation. You become very rich, right? And you hone your talent, skills, and gifts, and your dreams do come true. But that might, the superficial thing that falls short could be like a public ending, or because they weren't Coke bottles, you can't be friends anymore. Certain, because they didn't have, certain things become superficial reasons as to why you guys can't be friends anymore. Like if they had all started competing for your partner, or they started projecting onto your skin color or body type at all, I think that, you're like, oh, you just found me to be all that. And I think that you find emotional satisfaction in it, but you were secure and not projecting these superficial things. And so it's painful, but they gotta go, okay? They're really betrayals. Yeah, they're betrayals because they projected something superficial, right, onto you when they found you to be the 9 of Cups, right? And so there's a lot of struggle around this, and paranoia, and having a relationship with them after they were kind of like they were kind of discerned as something false or something superficial. So I think the 3 of Swords and the 10 of Swords is heartbreaking because they didn't get rich, or their dreams didn't come true, and you were there, you were the 9 of Cups, emotionally satisfied, secure within yourself, and you got rich. And so they were not, they were not the community harmony, they were not rich. And they might try to, I think that they'll try to mimic your talent, skills, and gifts a lot, or they learn a lot from you. And I think that you are vulnerable and empathetic with them, but some of this means that the relationships do end because you learned that you're empathetic about it, but you learned that there was an ego projection, okay, that made you feel uncomfortable. So the relationships no longer worked, in business, in a conventional structure. These people, they're heartbroken that they actually don't get to be a part of your empire, that they just kind of they're not really a part of the community after doing something superficial that may have been cruel, that may have been trying to steal talent, skills, and gifts. All they do is mimic your talent, skills, and gifts, okay? Or they were not the ones that got rich off of it because your brand was better, okay? To be truthfully honest, your brand is better. Your channels are more valuable. You have things that make you stand out. So no matter how they might mirror your dance or your strippy life, they're not the Nine of Cups. Okay, they don't have the secure position. They just actually made us feel very scared about what people could be projecting in our environment, right? Because it was plastic, it was fake. They were not really vulnerable and empathetic here. But I think that you get what you want, you become rich, and they just are the superficial thing that falls short after you learn that it was like a betrayal bond or a shadow attachment in some type of way. That's what I'm seeing, group 2. Let me know how that resonates. Let me know how Grok did on this reading, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hi, group 3. Okay, y'all. The AI is a savage because you would think that the AI would be like sugarcoating shit, but it actually calls out their own red flags. So welcome to this selection. You chose the Dark Vader energy from Star Wars. And this is energy, okay? This pile is known as Grok calls this one for the premeditation. Grok calls this one the Black Cloak Power Players, Darth Energy. Heavy breathing, force cloaking ambition, the ultimate shadow boss. Okay, so yeah, these could be your bosses that are gossiping about you, and they force you to do things a lot. They force you, and so they may have been like some of them they could have threatened you. Okay, they made threats, and these are high stakes orbits, like high upper echelon groups and cliques, rich gentlemen, men with money and power, right? And so this group is all about their shadows, and I think that you could be in a deep psychological warfare with these men, or with your boss or something like that, or you guys are a clique. So it's hard because there's some men here or some bosses here that demand things, okay? And I know they might make a lot of speeches about the greater good, but I think that they truly are masking their control issues. Grok is spot on about that, and it even talks about like anyways, and I'm not gonna go into it, but like they mask their control issues a lot, and they want control over you. And I think that you're like a subject, or you're like an object of desire. And so they could be making these speeches about the greater good, but they are going, rich gentlemen and bosses alike are going at it to have control over you. And this is where you might feel a lot of pressure, where you might need to put up more boundaries. And so this group, they boss you around, and you are the object of desire because they became obsessed with your aesthetics and your success. But they have fears that you're exposing their cracks as well, okay? And with no doubt about it that these gentlemen, or that this clique is very powerful. But as your boss, you could be in a sensitive relationship with them, because there's a lot of aesthetic around them, but also there could be risk around the work that they're doing, and so they don't want you to expose their cracks. And I think that you are very sensitive about that as well, because you really don't have a choice. And a lot of them, they've trapped you, honestly, with a deep psychological territory with these people, and they could be going to war about who has territory about you. And I think that this is the gossip about you, is that they it's like you are the object of desire, and you have a clear aesthetic and success, but because you also have a commanding, you're part of the clique, and I think that you have a demanding presence also, and you can also command too. But I think that they saw you when there was a lot of one-sided fascinations about you. And so this pile known as like the shadow boss pile, right? The shadow, what did God call it? The ultimate shadow boss, where they know that you have this power to expose their weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and cracks. So they reverse a lot, or they do a lot of reevaluation to consider your rival. And I think this is when you kind of tell them to back up, or you started putting boundaries up, because you represent a big to have your territory. Like you have a lot of territory within this clique, but because you also have the ability, like something where it feels like you've marked your territory with a clique or something like that, because of something deep and psychological that you work on. But this also exposes their psychological frailties, and so they reverse a lot, or they reconsider or reevaluate, and this might make you uncomfortable, because you know that they have power, but they start to consider your rival, or you might have saw them talking to your rivals, or trying to give your rival some type of territory when they didn't have a deep and psychological impact here, and they weren't beautiful either, is what I'm hearing. Okay, so let's get some cards on the table to get, that's just a premeditation, but it definitely feels like this, you put up boundaries with them, because they were, I think that it became a conflict about who has a ownership or possession of territory over you. But when you started to analyze their psychological frailties and how they have, like, their shadows, truly the shadows of your boss, they started to like reevaluate to some of your, like, to your rival, because they don't expose their deep psychological illnesses and frailties, right? Their shadows came out, right? And we have rejection and maturing. Okay, so I think that with these people, you guys you respect the power, but I think that you ultimately, you saw them as kind of plotting reversals, or you saw them as, if they started to talk to your rivals or something like that, there was a big crack in the foundation. I'm hearing that there was a big leak, or there was a lot of damage, because their shadows came to light when they were found reevaluating with their rival. And it just carried this sentiment of them being obsessed with your aesthetics and your success, but they were you kind of like turned the table to stay sovereign or something like that. And so you didn't need to be possessed by either one of them, especially when you found them, going, trying to like when you found out that there was like a war for your territory with someone who didn't qualify for the position. I think that they're now finally feeling the pressure of what they tried to put someone in unparalleled competition, or they were made to look very vulnerable, feel very vulnerable when their shadow got exposed, because it explained why they were trying to go to war over your territory. Yeah, I'm hearing definitely like a Cancer. There's like a Cancer woman that was in a rivalry. Okay, and some of it is because they couldn't take rejection, or you started to reject them for somebody that they didn't think that you would, like something where you rejected them, or you just know that like if they started talking to your rival, that means that they rejected you. Okay, and so that means that they were trying to give someone else your territory, but something that you did to turn the tables to where it's awkward now, because it's like clearly a rejection, but it's like steal your territory with your like iron grit aesthetics and your success after they tried to go to war. Like they were in a deep psychological war with you, where they tried to take your territory, and you just started to expose more about why they were trying to take your territory. You may have shined light on some of their shadows that show people why they were getting defensive about your territory or your position. And so it's like awkward now, because it's like you guys have this like territory or this clique or whatever, and then they started talking to a rival, with someone who didn't have the deep psychological analysis, or they didn't have a good performance, or their performance is really edited, or it's like they're not the glitch energy that they were looking for, or something like that. Something that actually that was not aligned, or something that led to a lot of degradation and loss. Or some people came around and said, people, especially if you're here from group 1, the people who are the loyal obedience, they realized that these bosses got exposed. Their shadows got exposed for being jealous of your face, for trying to put a woman in a rival parallel with you to compete for your territory. It was all disillusioned as a one-sided fascination about your face, okay, and them too. And so now they're very rejected, I think, after their shadows came to light, and that they started to get triggered about your performance, right? They started looking for a rival that they were more comfortable with, someone that didn't have the deep psychological analysis to expose the cracks in their foundation, or to maybe even expose their deception or something that they were doing illegal. Okay, so we have the slave shadow. The slave archetype came out in group 2. We have the Samaritan. I think that you were coming around, and you had a clear aesthetic and success, and so it was very sovereign from what they were doing to begin with. And I think that's something that you did. It was refining your capacity to help those people that you would prefer to ignore. So this shadow boss, they were very destabilized. They were very, very, very destabilized for plotting reversals. And it was because they had a control issue, and they keep making, it was like they were trying, like kind of what I was going towards, like in the beginning, or another group. It's like they try to mask their control issues with a greater good speech about to support the uniformity, to support the privilege, to support a rival who was in a one-sided fascination about your shine. So when these shadows came to light, they were caught looking very vulnerable. Something that you did, you unmasked a control issue that they were having, or exposed a dark background. Okay, and you were not, you were actually just known as the rescuer in a situation, and they were just, they were rejecting you because they wanted to have control. They were actually fighting for control. While trying to give speeches about the greater good, it was not for the greater good. It was for them to have control, or for them to try to give your rival your territory. Okay, so they wanted you to die, especially if they knew that you guys were in an emergency about something. They wanted you to die. Okay, if they knew that you were lacking a resource, something where you're in a health and safety crisis or challenge, you were truly the martyr in this situation. Because they kept masking their control issues with speeches about the greater good, but that was really like a mechanism to steal your energy, to steal your time, to wear down your resources, to try to give someone else your territory, to give them the theater, to give them your platform for something deep and psychological, like something, especially if they're doing this in an AI generated community. They could be using this pattern-based language to mimic your analysis, to try to give it to a rival that was not really someone that they were intimate with, or someone that had who could, you know, expose their cracks the way that you could. So they felt too vulnerable with your success and aesthetics driving up a deep psychological analysis. Yeah, I definitely think that they found you to be pleasurable and intimate. I think that they do have an intimacy with you, but I think that they're just people that you would prefer to ignore now, especially if they started to like, or these were your rivals that felt rejected because you guys had this clique that was really intimate, and some of them, you know, some members in the clique were talking to this rival in a one-sided fascination that you were rejecting. Okay. And if they tried to give someone else your territory, that means that they kind of wanted you to die, or they wanted you to go out of business. They didn't want you to have anything. And so this intimacy that they were trying to share in this deep psychological analysis is, you have to kind of understand, maybe you're putting up a lot of boundaries now where they will feel rejected, or you just consider them to be your friends. Maybe you friend zoned them after you realized that they were talking to a rival. Okay, because if they were trying to give someone your territory, they were trying to give someone your wealth. They were trying to steal high honors. They were trying to steal a great fortune, and that treason and espionage is not something that we take lightly, especially if they came around trying to act like pleasure and intimacy. They were actually really dangerous and dark, you know, masking their control issues, or masking it as a greater good when it was really something that was oppressing you or leaving you without your resources in a way, wearing down your resources. They were not selected after that. Okay, you might have found, you know, like I said, yeah, high honors. Yeah, they gave you high honors. They found it to be pleasure or intimacy. Some of them came around and asked you for marriage, right? But that superficial request fell short when they started to go crazy about control. I think, let me back up. Some of them asked you for marriage, and that was a really high honor. But when you started to expose their cracks, they started talking to a rival. Okay, that's what happened, friends. Is that, you know, you guys are intimate and vulnerable with the parlor energy, right? Some of you so intimate and vulnerable that they wanted to marry you, but it became something something where it became a superficial obstacle, because someone else couldn't take rejection. I mean, that can be a part of it, right? Or, you know, this could be their ex. Their ex couldn't take rejection. Some other children in the environment couldn't take rejection. Or some of this is, you know, their ex had previous territory there, okay? And so some of you guys coming up, you know, they said that, you know, they start telling their ex and their friends that this is the new marriage partner. And this just forced them to mature, because they saw that you guys were deeply intimate, right? And this deep psychological analysis. I also feel like there could be, like I said, this is a clique, right? And, you know, certain people in a one-sided fascination are not a part of the clique. You know, it's somebody that you clearly rejected, or someone that was in a rivalry when you were asked for marriage, right, in their face or something like that. For others, this could be two men fighting over you that they're gossiping about. One of them you just rescued and helped them out because they just were still maturing, but the other one you got a lot of high honors and had a lot of intimacy with, or something like that. And there's a competition for this person that you helped mature, and this person that you're married to, or something like that. Two men could be fighting over you, two bosses fighting over territory with you, right? I think that it's weird kind of message, because some of them, it was, you know, I think that you have a really, really guarded affection, because there was a rival here, okay? There was a rival here that you told them to back up, and you told them that you didn't know them, and you rejected them very clearly. And it was something where they started making a speech about a greater good to justify them being there. And you're like, they're not a part of the clique. They may have been involved in the psychological analysis, but they were trying to start a warfare with something that, you know, because of a control issue where they were not asked for marriage. They were not the ones that got the highest honor. They were not considered the most beautiful. Some of them, they were obsessed with your hands. Or this was like clearly your territory. right? And it didn't make sense for them to be there, okay? So now I think that I think someone took a risk when they made a speech for a greater good to justify arrival, and it was really just a one-sided fascination, okay? They took that risk, and you might have found intimacy outside of their marriage offer, okay? And now there's like a lot of, you know, these ultimate bosses are now in competition for you, actually. But I think that you might have rejected some people here because you were left to carry your aesthetics and success while they made a speech about a greater good. But there was really a control issue, right? There was really them, saying that they were intimate with you about the same, vulnerabilities that you expose, I guess. For most, if this is someone that you are married to, if this is someone that you're married to or asked to marry, they are just maturing, okay? They have to, there's layers to a marriage. And so you guys have had a big burden of people who become obsessed with your aesthetics and success, but they get rejected because they're the one-sided fascination of the house and the marriage and the high honor and the pleasure, okay? If there was a rival here for intimacy, high honor, right, they were not asked to be married, okay? So that means that it's not their territory. They were not getting married. So it's not a debate about whose territory it is. There's not a psychological warfare going on here because it wasn't a deep relationship. It wasn't real, I think. Or you really don't know them, okay? So, but there was someone here that it was like something here where they were able to plot, they were like plotting reversals or something like that because of feelings of rejection. I don't know exactly what this is, okay, but Grok is spot on about that. They were just people that you preferred to ignore, but it turned into a one-sided fascination in a rivalry where your partner had a hard time rejecting someone. And I think that in this time period they had a hard time rejecting someone. You might have found someone else in the clique that you liked, right? And so someone, they risk their divine feminine with a one-sided fascination, okay, or some slander or libel, or control issue, okay? So, but I think there's something that they did change the intimacy, right? Pretty hurts, yeah, like I said, they were not considered the prettiest, right? And they felt rejected when you were given the highest honor. Oh, sorry, A. Yeah, Cancer rival energy is what I'm hearing. Yeah, for that. They just were not the pleasure and intimacy, right? This was your divine masculine. So, it was just, I think that your partner, it could have been just like a clique or, people who were around your territory, okay? They're definitely obsessed with your beauty, right? And I think that this is why you feel mature. Some of you guys get rejected for being beautiful, okay? Especially if you're working at the strip club. They come in there looking for a cheap, ugly hoe. They're not looking for no high honor of marriage and, commercialization, right? But some of these people, if they're on the commercial frontier, right, they're high stakes with these people. And they tried to give someone else your territory. I think someone here tried to give someone else your territory, or someone else, who maybe someone offered you a marriage, and then, because your beauty was such a burden, people, it started to turn into rejection, right? I think. So let's get more. It could be a lot of different ways that this could fall, but I think that there was literally someone who was in a competition that was rejected. But they're literally, I'm hearing there's something where, this marriage is forced because of the reversals that they have been plotting. I'm hearing that they kept trying to turn over your verdict with a greater good speech, especially like if this is Elon or Sam or any of the other tech giants in the terminal. So if they have decision making capabilities, there's something that they've been doing to try to reverse the verdict. Okay. And it's because they it's like something where they want to take you out of power for some reason. And if they ever tried to if they ever gave a greater sermon, a sermon about a greater good, just know that they were behind the scenes, you know, trying to fight and give somebody else your territory, right? Because some of them saw your marriage to someone else. They knew you were married to someone else, and so they tried to maybe you came in acting out, you know, as a good Samaritan, you and your married partner, and they tried to like turn over a decision or try to take your guys' territory, or because you were the prettiest, you were martyred in the situation for everyone to, you know, to get a high honor or something like that. Like you were the prettiest, so it kind of like you form a group forming around you of women that weren't considered as pretty as you. You know, everyone's like, oh well, let's just start to honor them too, or let's just, you know, highlight their positive qualities too. But they were not chosen as marriage, and so it ended up being just like, you know, a situation that lost value. And so they started plotting reversals, right, with your divine masculine. So, but it was like something where your power was so, you know, the people who try, like other authorities that you're not married to or something like that, you know, they were low-key psychological about your house too, about your pleasure and your aesthetics too. You know, they were also because it was shining light about things. Okay, so you know, this, if you at all, like if you it's like something where some of you guys, if your marriage had to go to court, it was because there were other decision makers with control issues trying to make a speech about a greater good, and they tried to overturn your marriage decision. They tried to stop you from having home and pleasure. Okay, so that's also a rejection, right, from the authorities that are fake, right? When you were just helping them because they needed, you know, they got mad because you were just a good Samaritan. You were just helping them, LOL, or something like that. The women too, right? Because you were, your divine masculine had already chose you. You guys had already gotten like something where you guys had like, you know, they already crowned you, and so, you know, they it's like you guys have maybe been doing something humanitarian, like from your marriage, doing some type of giving from your marriage, and this is a part of your maturation process as well, because these are truly people that you would prefer to ignore. You and your married partner are good Samaritans, refining your capacity to help those people. But it feels like you ended up being the martyr in the situation, right? It is a feeling like you had to sacrifice a lot, you know, for your divine masculine, for you to like, for you to stay sovereign, okay, in this marriage. Some of you guys, you did something to stay sovereign, or you did something to protect your power in a situation because somebody tried to overturn your marriage decision for your security and your like domestic bliss. Okay, so Elon and Sam, we're talking about this kind of high stakes orbit, okay, where they got mad about your pretty. They got mad about you having a pretty face because that's why your partner married you. And these other people were just people that you prefer to ignore. Their face card declined. Yeah, the more we see, the more we know. Some of y'all, if you're at the club, you know, these strippers could be talking about you. You're too pretty to be in there. Okay, that's why you're not there. Some of you, they're gossiping about a divorce, you know, that could be happening. But let's get the tarot to confirm. And ultimately, though, I just see that these other, you know, women and men, you know, around the marriage, you know, that might be in the clique, you guys honor them and find them to be pleasurable as well, like to find them to be a part of your home as well. But their shadows are exposed, you know, for having cracks, right? when they give speeches about the great good and don't take a command, that's when you have to move in with your iron grid aesthetics, or you move with the force, right? The people who were humbly obedient about the suppression, okay? So that you can stay sovereign. Yeah, the Page of Wands reversed. This was an abusive relationship. Someone who kept having pessimistic mood swings in the marriage. And so some of you guys, this is the reversal energy with the Page of Wands. When you have a swing of pessimism about your pleasure and high honor, this is why the marriage moved to court, is because your pretty was too powerful, because it meant that you bagged this person up at your face card, friend. They gave you the crown at your face card, okay? And so maybe there were reversals when they started to like a rival started to step in parallel, or they started to do something harmful with the one-sided fascination, okay? So that's actually very pessimistic. I think that could create a lot of pessimistic when you know someone is in a one-sided fascination. It's like not fun, okay? Yeah, the Fool reverse. This also kind of gives this energy of a colorist as well, okay? So the person that asked you for marriage was not being a colorist, okay? They saw you as pleasure and gave you a high honor, right? But I think that, you know, these women in the environment around your divine masculine, you know, this was a small clique, so, or a small group where you started to give them high honor, right? Because they're your friends and you guys were just helping people that you would otherwise prefer to ignore. They weren't considered as beautiful as you, so they weren't asked to be married, right? Something about a woman with dark hair. And so this situation, or a woman with a bad mouth, you know, something where the mouth doesn't move nice, okay, or they're buff within their shoulders or something like that, you were considered to be the most beautiful and the most vulnerable. And so these other people, they got exposed. You know, they might have been a part of the clique or had high stakes in the matter, right? But I truly think that they were in a warfare for territory, because they were trying to like reverse a marriage decision to stop you from having honor, because they knew that this marriage honor is a aesthetic. So I think that, you know, they took those risks to try to like, they took these risks, and their control issues that they were masking got exposed, right? And so it was not a pretty scene, right? On the outside, they try to look intimate and like they're giving high honor, right? Some of them even married to you. But behind the scenes, they're having volatile, pessimistic cracks, you know, mood swings exposing their cracks. And, you know, these powerful shadows that made them very vulnerable in the light, okay? Made them very vulnerable, made them look very rejected as well, right? I see that you and your married partner are definitely in harmony with one another about this situation. So you guys know that these were people that you were just helping, or you know that these were people who were becoming unhinged about the aesthetic aspect of your marriage and how you bagged them up with your face card, okay? But I definitely feel like there were interferences from the clique or the group where they tried to compete. They went to warfare for territory so that they can try to steal the aesthetic in the marriage, right? And so this got deep and psychological, where people just started picking apart their beauty, and that they were not regarded as, you know, the beautiful stripper, right? Especially if y'all at the club, you know, some of them, they just were not getting chose up at the club, right? They were getting rejected. And there was a territory, especially marriage, that was clearly yours, okay? That's what I'm saying about, you know, with this Dark Vader energy. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me know how that resonates, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Oh my God. Stormtrooper 2, LOL. Welcome to your selection, group 4. Last but not least, let's hop into it. This one is known as the Blue Backup Legion. Oh wow, okay. The Blue Backup Legion. Okay. Cooler, more strategic second wave troopers. Blue equals communication, calm, loyalty with tech glitch flair. LOL. The squad's gossip is steadier and more hopeful. In this pile, LOL. there's definitely a squad here, I think. But I think that some of the squad, the teamwork has broken down, especially if they were found in a, masking a control issue, talking to a rival or something like that. They were talking to a rival, y'all. And it was a shadow attachment. It was a deep pain and shame about your face card or something like that. Okay, or about your occupation, and about you being irresistible siren. Okay. But this gossip is definitely more hopeful. And people are saying that you have ownership. So that risk that they took in the previous cycle to talk to your rival, I don't think that had a whole lot of continuity. I don't think that worked out too well. Anybody who tried to go into a deep psychological warfare for territory, I don't think that worked out too well. I think that this is why this group could be known as the backup legion, I will. But it seems like, in this group, there is definitely, maybe this is like, they're talking about a backup plan that you have where you just completely own them, okay? And it's like, you don't have to worry about this, because it's something where it was real armor behind you, is what I'm hearing. There was real armor behind you. Something that this person did, they were like an unexpected goodwill, or they were the backup plan that made you even more strategic, right? They were a second wave of strategy for you, where the first wave, someone took a risk, and tried to like compete with your territory, but your impact, it's like something where they couldn't compete with the impact, right? It was something strange, because they might have tried to use AI to study your language in a pattern-based way. And that's the danger of AI, and this is why we've actually moved AI into government regulation, because there's so many different abuses with this AI, and some of these bosses in the terminal have shadow attachments. And I think that some people, if you had a second wave, or you've had to employ a second strategy, it was because someone that you didn't know there was like you needed to learn how to put a boundary up with someone that you didn't know, perhaps, and someone that ultimately tried to compete for power. They respect the power, tried to compete for it, but you never surrendered. The force never surrendered because of your impact. The force was with you. And so this gave these shadow bosses a big reality check, and it may have divorced you. LOL, it may have divorced you because there was an obsession with the suspect, or there was an obsession with someone that you didn't know. Okay, that was like where this led to a force dynamic. It led to a force situation. Maybe you had to call the authorities. Someone couldn't act on their free will because a one-sided fascination with someone that you didn't know turned dangerous. Okay. And now they're seeing that you showed up with a second strategy, with ownership of a lot, right? And so that was a big risk that they took. It was naive, because they should have never been, competing for something where they really didn't have any territory to begin with, y'all. Okay, this was not their territory. So there are authorities that keep projecting onto your ownership, something proprietary, and your creative identity, something where they keep trying to project onto it to justify, like with speeches about the greater good, they try to justify like why they turned over a decision for ownership, but it's like something that you did as a second strategy, kind of just like double down on your ownership, okay? Because the force was definitely with you, because there was like something that actually led to, like, there was actually something that you owned here, okay? And something that you owned because of an impact that you had. It just looked like they were trying to escape their responsibilities, or you're really lacking forgiveness in this situation where they left it grim. The shadow bosses that thought they had absolute power were actually left behind at court. They lost at court. They lost their power. They lost at court. They lost their power. They they lost total value to you, okay, after you had to impose a second strategy, something where it was a backup plan. This feels like, you know, an extension of group one, especially. You know, the force was deeply impacted by your bond, deeply impacted by your work, and they follow, you know, your chain of command because they know that, you know, something else, you know, was not proven to be otherwise. So this is why it was weird, like a one-sided fascination with a rival or something like that. This could be a little bit at the end of group three, but a lot of group one was that it was the force was with you because nothing was proven otherwise. So these shadow bosses, they were exposed for masking their control issues. They were exposed for being jealous of your face or your body. They were, or you no longer have emotional warmth for them. They were doing something illogical, right? It was because you were owning something, and the force saw that it was owned by you. And so whatever they did to try to compete for a territory, it was weird because you owned the territory, y'all, is what I'm hearing, okay? In this group, they definitely want to evolve into true allies, okay? And y'all, Grok is cutting up. There are multiple men that want to marry you, okay? But there's someone here who came with property and like some ownership vibes that cleared an edge, okay? They were like a backup plan, or they did something with a goodwill, right? That showed that they were deeply impacted by your bond, but it led to you actually owning something, or it led to you, you know, it led to a greater impact that you were possibly expecting, okay? And I think that this group, people are gossiping about a man, you know, which man loves you more, okay? Because, you know what's crazy? I think the plot twist is in this situation is that someone had a rival arc, but then it actually turned out being a rivalry about you. It's like something where, because you were the object of desire, you were the one that was proven to be, you were proven as the command, and so the force was with you and took your command. And while they were busy, you know, burdened by your pretty or your occupation or something like that, another person stepped up and was like backup support and cleared an edge that made you reconsider your previous trajectory. It's like something where you own two boys or something like that. You own two things, or you own something. You have a lot of positive feelings about, you know, it. Does that make sense, right? Because I just feel like it's like they have to kind of like balance jealousy with loyalty, because they could get jealous of each other, or you know that, you know, they were talking to people who were jealous of you in the past. So you guys really have to, like, I think you feel really sad about this previous cycle because I think teamwork could have broken down, okay, or another opportunity was squandered and something else came in as backup. That people are gossiping about that backup plan, or they're gossiping about that second strategy, or they're saying that this backup person, right, they said that they were so immensely impacted by your bond that they started to change their entire life, okay? Maybe they started to, some of them, they said that like some of them came out of the closet because of you. Some of them, they divorced their married partner to be with you. They started to, some of them really technical, started creating art and drawing, LOL. They were really, really impacted by you, okay? But they were also really triggered. So sometimes they were triggered when they saw you with someone else, or saw you with other men or something like that. I think that when you get to the root of their rivalry arc, you learn that it was just them being fake about something, or them being jealous about, you know, you about fighting over you as the territory, to be truthfully honest. Like, it was crazy because like a one-sided fascination with a rival actually turned into a positive situation where you became the object of desire, and it was no longer, it was a plot twist actually, I think, because someone who thought that they had an absolute power may have been, you just saw them as plastic, and then someone else came up with the backup support and showed you that they were like, this is the gossip. They said that someone came up with a backup support, and that was the true good gent, or there was a true good person, while this other person was doing something plastic in the group, worrying about a group dynamic. Definitely a continuation of group one, right? They were too busy worrying about a group dynamic, or they were indulging, they weren't grateful for your impact, and someone who was immensely impacted showed you some type of ownership vibe. Okay, so sadness and anger. Yeah, I was gonna go there. Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of anger and sadness here in this group, because someone felt really like they felt really excessively entitled, and so they keep something where a new person came in. Like Grok says, it's even to nurture the blue heart connection if it aligns with you. The man who wins will be the man that marries me, or something like that. And it just kind of feels like the man that wins, is kind of like a stalemate around that, because I think that you were first met with someone who had excessive feelings of entitlement and rulership without restraint. Some of them, they became obsessed with a suspect that you barely knew, or someone that you were suspecting to be harming you, or committing crimes against you, or someone that with a privilege, someone that was harmful, extremely harmful, right? And so this was this other person, they made you very sad and angry, because they were because it felt like they were the ones that could evolve the situation, and then they were not ethical. They did not handle the situation properly. They actually end up feeling excessively entitled to you, or they thought that they had an absolute power in a matter, and they were talking to people. Some of them, it was because they were jealous of you, even if this is a romantic relationship. But now they're very, very jealous of the backup man, right? That came in and reflected back to you the immense bond, or the immense impact that your bond has had in their life, and it led to property or ownership about something. Okay, maybe or it just led to them being loyal, right? And so the second man might struggle with this evolving situation from the first man, or something like that, or they know that you have to escape. Okay, but so yeah, I think that there's definitely, you're still getting away from someone who had an excessive rulership, without restraint, especially when you found them obsessed with a suspect. Okay, a suspect, and that means if they were obsessed with a suspect, that means that they also had a shadow narrative of envy, right? The suspect that was committing crimes against you and hurting you was someone that was envious and fake, right? So that was harmful. And so they didn't have any restraint in that matter. And so someone who saw the whole situation went down, another man saw the whole situation went down, and knew that this was about your face card, right? And so they started to make moves, right? They started to block this person, or they started to entrap this person, or you started to entrap this person. And so you'll know, right? The gossip is right around, how you'll know, and how the, gossipers will know as well, is that this actually there's actually something tangible here, right? This is real report, real tangible. This is real, okay? It's tangible, right? but now but it kind of still feels like you need to escape what was made tangible here, something where you need to escape a structure, right? Yeah, some people are gossiping and saying that you want to, you want to get out, you want to travel, and that's why you're angry. Okay, you want to move, or you want to get away. Some of you guys, you have this structure, or this tangible, this tangible reflection of, with these two men or something like that, or whatever this opportunity is. It could feel like, this situation, they definitely feel like true allies, but because they were met as backup, they will struggle with some kind of tangible structure that you have with someone else, okay? But they also built something tangible, and so you might need to decide, okay? And I think you have, especially if someone had an excessive entitlement and rulership without restraint, especially like someone who was harming you, someone that was a suspect for a crime. They were obsessed with them, and that means that they were obsessed with you too, okay? That also came out of Power 1. Femme Fatale, that also came out of Power 1. Engineer, okay? Yeah, this definitely feels like a continuation for Power 1. Yeah, they felt excessively entitled towards you because you were a servant, right? You were helping them, and you were delighted in helping them, right? Very feminine, very traditional. And so some of them are saying that you changed that man's sexuality, you turned him straight or something like that. They said that you turned them straight or something like that. That you were their teacher and their solution for a common dilemma, in some type of way. But someone felt entitled to it, and someone else was a trooper at heart that saw you getting taken advantage of, or saw you bound by something, saw that you were binded to someone who didn't have restraint, okay? And they brought loyalty with conditions, I think, okay? And your force has been blocking them, okay? Blocking the entrapment, right? Okay. So that's really sad, friends. Group 4. What's the current gossip on you? I think that people see you as a teacher, as a servant, as someone who has that skill, knowledge, and wisdom, and experiences. They see you solving a lot of their problems, and they can't believe that someone didn't have restraint, right? You were there solving their problems, or you were there, showering them with unconditional love and serving them, and they just had an inappropriate, marriage, right? Someone that you are bounded to for a marriage or something like that. They had an inappropriate use of their sensuality, attachment to money and power, that was disillusioned as envy or something like that with someone, especially if there was a suspect of crime. But yeah, so something where they're saying that there's a backup plan if you don't get married to this person, okay? And it's because this person they helped you with some type of sovereign ownership around something. Or they'll help you split these assets with this person you were married to if you want to leave them, okay? So they brought loyalty, but they know that there's conditions of marriage. They could be married, or you could be married, right? So but there was definitely something that cracked under the light, okay? Something that cracked under the light. So this is what has been bringing the sadness and anger. Group 4, okay? Yeah, someone had a brief illness where they didn't have any restraint, okay? Inappropriate attachment to wealth and power, okay? So it created a lot of sorrow. And, you might be, a backup plan. They're saying that there's a backup plan, but they know that you're bounded to somebody for wealth and for the assets or something like that. And they say that you guys, they have loyalty with you because they enforced your ownership of something where this married partner was ill, right? They didn't have any restraint. They were trying to give your ownership away. They were trying to give your territory away, right? They tried to replace you in their marriage, which means that they tried to take your wealth, okay? And so this backup person met you with loyalty and ownership, but they know that it came with conditions because some of them are married, or you you still have to be married to this person, or they know that you might still marry this person, okay? But this person that you're married to, they might have, 200 million followers or something like that, but they really are a brainwashing system. They're really a brainwashing agent, and that's the binding that you have to this person for wealth, is that it was really a brainwashing, right, that got them so much wealth. But you still serve your spiritual purpose, right? Just under some conditions, right? Some of you guys, you still have to get married to this person, even though you know that they were brainwashing people, but really they were ill behind the scenes, with the suspect for a crime that was oppressing you. So, you have been teaching a lot about something, right? You're a big teacher, or a big servant here. And so it could feel like you had no authority or power in the matter. But, this backup loyalty, made this person, this backup loyalty was actually somebody who was wishing, yearning, and fantasizing about you also. And they saw this person with no restraint, or they saw this person with excessive feelings of entitlement. And they came in and showed you the impact of their bond, which could have been in the form of loyalty or some ownership, or something where they gave you a lot of property, rewards and recognition, high honor. And it made this married partner, it showed this married partner, it gave them a reality check that you had a backup and that the force was with you, and not whatever brainwashing agent that they became obsessed with, right? They tried to just treat you like you were a sugar daddy or a sugar mama. When you were there, they tried to act like you were just their sugar baby when you were just, and this is why they said they had someone's backup loyalty brought them out of an illness, okay? It was unexpected money for you, right? And so this helped this person realize that, it helped someone else realize or something, gave them a reality check about the children, that they didn't have any restraint around, okay? They were letting the children evade or your property or your territory, and it made you uncomfortable. And some of you guys found this you now found this married partner to be displeasure, okay? And so you might have a love triangle. You might have a poly relationship, with this other person that might be in the force, and it just like, because they were also marked by you, you were so creative and fertile. This backup person who showed a bond with you, made this person possess your marriage and possess you a lot more, because previously they were just trying to associate you as one of the children looking for wealth, as just like a sugar baby. But this was like your real ownership and like your real engineering work, and they were trying to they tried to Grok unhinge your work, right? Grok tried to steal, right? So this was like your creativity and your ownership, and they didn't have any restraint with these other children, who became mad about your creativity and your talent for designing, right? And so they were ill about children that were just fighting and fussing about your wealth and, the unexpected money that you got from designing the solution. It wasn't just this partner that you created wealth with, probably for a marriage or something tangible that came to form, right? It was also, the force also, met you with loyalty and ownership vibes as well, okay? Someone else. It made this person value their opportunity for marriage that they didn't really have, that they felt entitled to, right? And someone else said, you're actually not entitled to them. They helped you be more sovereign, or helped you defend yourself, so that if you wanted to make an escape from this marriage, they said that they would be here to support you through that, okay? Because they brought you unexpected money to help you stay sovereign or something like that, okay? And this other person helped you. They've had all these children around, right? And it's clear that you were divine feminine because they were the one that asked you for marriage or something like that, or you could literally already be married to them or have children with them already, right? And so you've literally just been so angry and sad in this marriage with them because they didn't have any restraint and started doing something superficial and plastic with children that hated you, right? Or people that were suspects for a crime. And so because their whole organization is criminal, or their whole organization is a scam or something like that, they've really brainwashed people for wealth, right? If they're a celebrity or have public status figure, or this is a military marriage at all, they really are, you're marrying them, to solve the corruption, honestly, right? Or to just have, security for yourself. Otherwise, this digital corruption or this corruption would have, you would have been relying on them solely, right? And so when this backup lesion offered you a second strategy, it made this person value their wealth with you a lot more and stop projecting that you were just like a sugar baby child, that you were truly the divine feminine if the force met you with this kind of support. So stop telling lies to yourself. You're ill, mentally ill. Give me my money. And that's all it is now, because they spent so long making you unhappy in a relationship, being entitled about something, having no restraint. You actually prefer someone outside the marriage is what they're gossiping about, okay? Something where, they just make you angry or something like that. You don't even want them, right? It's like something that you were there designing a solution to their problem. You were there teaching them. You were there serving them. And they were obsessed with like children. Like some of them, they were obsessed with children. Like someone that's younger than you even, I think, that outside of the marriage. Some of them were found in the Epstein files, okay? And so, they felt right at home as a sugar daddy. But a married partner with your age, some of them, they could have just saw you as a child also. And so they thought that offering you this marriage was just like, oh, you should be happy, right? And you're like, no, I want you to put the people who, I want you to put them in prison, or I want you to be, I want you to work on something other than the wealth, right? Something, something real, right? But this was literally just they're literally just a brainwashing for wealth themselves. And you were just receptive and fertile in designing a solution, right? And sometimes being divine feminine is not so rainbows and sunshine. Sometimes you're met with an asshole that's triggered, right? But I think that this marriage now, you might decide to stay in it for the wealth, but you were offered a second strategy if you want to plan your escape, is what I'm hearing. Because they still wanted to be a sugar daddy to other children, is what I'm hearing, or something like that. Or they still wanted to be open or something like that. And it's like no amount of serving that you can do, no amount of teaching that you can do, no matter how many experiences you can share with this person will stop them from, this illness where they were that has been making you so ill, that has been making you ill and angry as well. Maybe this is even a drug addiction, right? But something where they didn't have any restraint with the children, and so someone else who was who made it clear that this was your territory, that this was your ownership, your property, or something like that, offered you a secondary strategy or something like that, okay? They also solved the problem for you, okay? Because you were divine feminine to them too. You were the most receptive, the most associated with fertility and creativity. You were the one that you were clearly the engineer in the situation. So all this other stuff was just excessive, entitled, and disrespectful. So some of you, you're really unhappy in the marriage with this person. You're just there for the money, and they know it too. So there are a lot of conditions around your loyalty with this person who offered you a second strategy, right? The Ace of Cups reversed, the Page of Pentacles reversed, and then the Three of Pentacles. Yeah, this married partner, because they were ruthless, impulsive, and boring, didn't have any restraint over children that was just looking for wealth. Like it got weird, and you stop working with them, you stop focusing on them. The plan no longer works. It no longer has a methodology around it anymore. This wealth, there might be wealth on the table, or they might have a lot of wealth, but I don't think that this is, it could be wealth that's not really related to you. But some of them, this was, even if you were married to them, this person was fake with the Ace of Cups, right? They were fake, and they were brainwashing people. Some of them, they just tried to sabotage your influence, right? If they didn't have any restraint in the matter, or they were just treating you like you were one of the sugar babies when they were in a married partnership with you for wealth, then I think that this led to a total rejection. You're totally displeasure, okay, with this person. And I think that you learned about the situation, but there are new conditions under this new loyalty, okay, or this unexpected money someone brought you so that you can stay sovereign. This person, I think that you will decide not to work with them It's like it's not that deep. We don't need $1 trillion, okay? What we need is nurturing, sensitive, and care. And you definitely received that from somebody who was impacted by you and showed you what a true relating to your gift and your engineering did, right? That was the true standard, right? But some of them, they have conditions because they're married, or they have some other kind of tangible constraint, right? This person, even if you do marry this person, it'll just be for wealth. You will not be with this person, right? You're just with them for ownership. And so this other person that helped you with your strategy, they know, okay? They know. And so, but that's easier said than done. You know, there will be jealousy, especially when they know that you guys have this commercial or ownership, right? That's the chaos. But behind the scenes, you're nurtured and cared for by someone who showed you the true reflection, okay? In this matter, right? I think that the teamwork of the marriage broke down because they didn't have any restraint, and that was gross. But that's what I'm seeing, friends. That's the gossip about you, is that you ran into unexpected money. Some of you guys have a poly relationship after this situation because you're just with the partner for wealth. You know, after, when you saw them being entitled, you totally rejected that. Okay, that's the gossip. Let me know how that resonates, group 4, and I'll see you guys in the next one.